Tell me, did I have it wrong?
No.
Okay.
I'm starting out like such a bitch.
No. Listen.
Pedro Pascal has finally said what the fans have been screaming for months, and he didn't sugarcoat it. In a recent interview, he revealed that he's still in active denial over Joel's death in The Last of Us Season 2.
And your career survived.
My career survived.
overcome that.
Not frustrated, not conflicted, in denial. Let that sink in. The man who brought Joel Miller to life, gritty, broken, beloved, just openly admitted that even he can't accept what happened. And honestly, I think that says it all. This wasn't just a character exit. It was the moment the show lost its soul. Joel wasn't just a protagonist. He was the spine of the story. He was the father figure, the protector, the emotional core that everything else revolved around. And in episode 2, barely halfway through the popcorn, he was ripped away like an afterthought.
It's a completely different show this season. And everything's fine.
You are,
No crescendo, no payoff, just gone. Season 2 was supposed to deepen the narrative. Take the emotional groundwork of Season 1 and elevate it. Instead, it blew a hole in the story that never got patched.
There isn't really a deliberate approach to acting at 11 years old, and there's still not really a deliberate approach now. I just sort of winged it and continue to, and I think it's going okay.
Fans weren't just sad. They were blindsided, and the rest of the season never recovered. The momentum was shattered. The energy collapsed. And by the finale, even die-hard supporters were asking one thing: what happened to the show we fell in love with? Pedro Pascal didn't just act the role of Joel. He wore it. Every scar, every grunt, every glance full of regret.
Were you familiar with the game?
I didn't know about the game before I got the job. And then I got the job and I found out very quickly about the game. But I called my sister, who's got 2 teenage boys. And I was on speaker. When she answered, she was dropping them off at school. And she's like, "What's going on?" And I said, "Well, there's this job offer or opportunity. It's based actually on a video game." And they're like, "What is it?" And I was like, "It's called The Last of Us!" "You better get that job!"
He was Joel. He brought nuance, pain, and warmth to a character who was already iconic in the gaming world. And when he says he's still in active denial about Joel's death, that's not performance, that's pain. In his interview with Entertainment Weekly, Pascal openly confessed that the death of Joel still haunts him.
You killed Joel. He did what he saved me. I'm the one that there's no cure because of me. I am the one that you want. Just let him go. I let you both live. And you wasted it.
It makes me sad, he said simply. Not in character. In real life. That's the kind of honesty that punches you in the gut. And he's not alone in that grief. Pascal's bond with Bella Ramsey was electric. Whether you liked every scene or not, their chemistry was undeniable. They weren't just co-stars. They felt like a real father-daughter duo, and fans felt that authenticity in every frame.
And the second meeting, I really remember him showing me like parts of The Last of Us 2 when it was like early days of getting made, which was pretty crazy. And he told me what happens, which was also crazy. I've been sitting with this secret for so long.
Basically Neil and you have known this for 12 years.
But I was just excited to, know him and learn from him. And we did one table read, and then that's all that really happened. That's it.
Which made what happened next so much worse. When Joel was ambushed and killed in the second episode of the season, rushed, chaotic, and emotionally unearned, it was more than a shocking plot twist. It was betrayal. It felt like the writers tore out the one element that grounded the story and just moved on like it was no big deal. Pascal's grief isn't just for Joel. It's for the version of the story we could have had, the story fans deserved. His sadness mirrors ours, and the more he opens up, the more obvious it becomes.
That's weird, I don't know why.
Yes, you do. I'm not stupid and I'm not blind.
Fuck. Oh shit, you were guessing? Look, she's obviously gonna tell you. So just act surprised, okay? None of this has to change things between us.
How far down that road did you get in your mind about playing Ellie in a Last of Us film?
I think it just really felt like a big deal. And what I remember, like the highlights of that time were just going to Naughty Dog, like headquarters, I guess, and walking around with Neil and him showing me how the game is made.
He's just as disappointed as we are. Let's be brutally honest. Episode 2 should have been unforgettable. Joel's death could have been a masterpiece of storytelling. A moment so painful, so powerful, that it stayed with us for years. Instead, it felt like a checkbox, a task on a to-do list.
I'm gonna be a dad.
Yeah.
Sure, in the video game, Joel dies, but the game earns that moment. The emotional groundwork is laid. The pacing builds tension. And when it finally happens, it wrecks you. You're left staring at the screen, empty, because it meant something. It hurt. In the show, it was clumsy, abrupt, cold. The pacing was a mess. There was no tension, no slow unraveling of fear.
And I really remember all of those details. And he even showed me at one of our, I think we only really in the grand scheme of things, I think we only had 2 meetings.
Mm-hmm.
No space to breathe. Joel goes down and that's it. The next scene's already pushing forward, like nothing happened. The showrunners treated one of the most iconic character deaths in modern media like a plot checkpoint, and the aftermath? Practically non-existent. Ellie had a few scenes of pain, sure, but where was the devastation? Where was the rage? Where was the silence? The unbearable weight of what just happened. Viewers were waiting for that punch in the chest, and it never came. Critics noticed. Fans noticed. Everyone noticed. Instead of mourning with Ellie, we were left confused, even awkward. And that's the problem. When a death this big doesn't land, everything after it feels hollow. The showrunners might have thought they were being bold, but instead, they proved how easy it is to ruin something beautiful when you don't respect what made it work in the first place. In the game, Ellie is a masterpiece of character development. She's not just angry, she's unraveling. She's grieving, spiraling, and doing unspeakable things just to feel something again. Her journey is dark, violent, and deeply human. It's what made The Last of Us Part 2 unforgettable. But in the show, that same Ellie barely showed up. Bella Ramsey's portrayal had flashes of emotion, but let's not pretend those flashes were enough. Instead of a tortured soul consumed by loss, what we got felt, at best, like someone reading the character's Wikipedia page. The depth, the inner chaos, the evolution. It wasn't there, not consistently, not convincingly. And that's not just a minor issue. That's the whole story falling apart. Where was the weight behind her choices? Where was the slow burn of trauma we saw in the game? Ellie in Season 2 should have been terrifying and heartbreaking at the same time. She should have made us ask, what is revenge turning her into? But we never got there. Ramsey's version of Ellie felt emotionally flat and disconnected from the source material. Not because the writing was bad, but because the performance just didn't match the stakes of the story being told. And let's be real, when your lead doesn't hit those emotional notes, the audience checks out. That's exactly what happened. Here, people didn't just dislike this version of Ellie, they couldn't even recognize her. This wasn't the girl who survived losing Riley, Tess, and Joel. This was a watered-down silhouette, a version with none of the grit, pain, or fire that defined her. And once Ellie fell apart, so did the rest of the season. Here's the question that won't die. Should Bella Ramsey have been recast? It's the elephant in the room, and fans have been shouting it from the rooftops since Season 2 began. The showrunners, Craig Mazin and Neil Druckmann, have gone out of their way to defend her. They've said recasting was never considered. They've praised her as a generational talent. They've said she is Ellie. But let's be blunt. Just because a creator says something doesn't make it true for the audience. The truth is, Bella Ramsey's look, voice, and energy simply didn't line up with the Ellie we knew from the game. Not in Season 1, and especially not in Season 2, where Ellie needed to come off as someone hardened by trauma and twisted by revenge. In the game, this version of Ellie is terrifying. She's physically threatening, she's unpredictable, she commands every scene, but Ramsey never projected that. Her youthful appearance and softer screen presence clashed hard with the darker tone of the second season, and fans noticed immediately. You can't have a lead who's supposed to be emotionally unraveling and physically intimidating, and instead comes across as detached and unconvincing. That disconnect was so obvious, It pulled viewers right out of the story. What happened next? A tidal wave of discourse online. Threads, video essays, TikToks. Fans weren't just critiquing. They were demanding change. Not out of hate, but out of disappointment. Because they cared. They wanted to believe in this version of Ellie. And when it didn't land, they felt betrayed. So while Mazin and Druckmann stood firm, the audience was already on a different page. And once that trust cracks, it's hard to get it back. The fallout was fast and brutal. By the time the third episode aired, social media was on fire. Posts criticizing Ramsey's performance flooded Twitter and Reddit. Memes mocking her emotional delivery started going viral. YouTubers were uploading scene-by-scene comparisons to the game, showing just how far the show had drifted. Fans weren't just disappointed, they were furious. And the criticism didn't stop with Ellie. Viewers blasted the pacing, the flat dialogue, the lifeless tension. People felt like they were watching a passion project that had lost its passion. It wasn't just bad, it was disrespectful to the story that fans held sacred. Every comment section was a battlefield, and one message kept showing up over and over again. What happened to this show? Then came the numbers. Fan scores on Rotten Tomatoes plummeted to 55%. A massive drop from the near-universal acclaim of Season 1. Viewer retention tanked. By mid-season, the show had lost over half its audience. Let that sink in. More than 50% of viewers walked away. For a show that was once called the best video game adaptation of all time, that's a catastrophic fall. And the sad part? It was preventable. The fans wanted to love Season 2. They wanted to be wrecked by it. But when the emotion didn't land, when the characters felt hollow, and when their feedback was dismissed, they bailed. Because no matter how high your budget is, or how faithful your storyboards are, you can't fake emotional resonance. And Season 2 just didn't have it. As the criticism reached a boiling point, Craig Mazin and Neil Druckmann stepped in to defend their decisions. They didn't just stand by Bella Ramsey. They went all in. Publicly. Repeatedly. In interviews, press junkets, and panels, they insisted that Ramsey's performance was brilliant, layered, and exactly what the story needed. They praised her emotional range and claimed her interpretation brought a new depth to Ellie that even surpassed expectations. But here's the problem. No amount of praise can overwrite what fans actually saw on screen. Their defense came off less like conviction and more like damage control. The louder the backlash got, the more intensely they dug in. Instead of engaging with the criticism, listening to why fans were disconnected, they doubled down on the idea that everyone else was wrong, that the audience just didn't get it. And that kind of arrogance, it never sits well, especially not with a fan base this passionate. At the heart of it, fans weren't just mad that changes were made. They were mad that the emotional blueprint of the game, what made it so powerful, was seemingly discarded. Mazin and Druckmann's insistence that they stayed true to the source material only added fuel to the fire. Because let's be real, nothing about Season 2 felt true. And when creators act like criticism is ignorance instead of heartbreak, they don't just lose viewers, they lose respect. By the time the finale aired, the tension between the show and its audience had reached a breaking point. This was supposed to be the moment the series redeemed itself. A final emotional crescendo to remind everyone why this story matters. Instead, what viewers got was awkward silence. The finale tried to deliver a punch, but there was no wind-up, no momentum. Scenes that should have left us shattered felt flat. Ellie's final moments were supposed to reflect a woman consumed by vengeance, grief and self-destruction. But what played out on screen barely scratched the surface of that arc. And it wasn't just underwhelming, it was embarrassing. Fan reactions said it all. Some called the ending unintentionally funny. Others said it felt like a parody. TikToks mocking Ramsey's monologues racked up millions of views. Threads dissecting the finale's failures dominated every platform. People weren't mourning, they were cringing. And that's the worst outcome for any drama. When the audience isn't crying or angry, they're laughing. The emotional stakes collapsed. The tension fizzled, and what should have been the defining chapter of Ellie's story turned into a meme. That wasn't just a bad ending, that was a creative faceplant, and fans made it clear, if this is the version of The Last of Us we're getting, they want no part of it. Then, the whispers started. Industry insiders began suggesting that HBO was considering a major course correction, recasting Ellie. After months of backlash, internal friction, and declining numbers, it made sense. You don't let your flagship show burn to the ground without at least looking for the fire extinguisher. And while HBO has yet to officially confirm anything, fans are already buzzing. Allegedly, casting directors have begun informal outreach for a new face to take over the role. Not a complete overhaul, but a reset. Someone who could bring the emotional depth, physical presence, and psychological nuance that Ellie's arc demands. Some fans were outraged, others relieved, but almost everyone agreed something needs to change, because the current trajectory isn't just unpopular, it's unsustainable. If the rumors are true, this isn't just a casting decision. It's a creative reckoning, an acknowledgement that the show got too far from what made the game great. And now, it's time to try again. So where does The Last of Us go from here? That's the million-dollar question. Season 3 has already been greenlit. The show isn't canceled, yet, but its foundation is cracked. And if HBO doesn't fix it, fast, it won't survive another season. This isn't about pleasing everyone. It's about reconnecting with the soul of the story, rebuilding trust, recentering the show on what made it work, emotional truth, complex characters, and a willingness to go dark when it matters. That means rethinking the tone, reevaluating the cast, and finally admitting what everyone's known since episode 2 aired. They lost the thread. The fan base is fractured. The buzz is poisoned. And HBO only has one shot left to prove that The Last of Us still has something to say. Because the next chapter isn't just another season, it's a rescue mission. As the show moves forward, it remains to be seen how this change will impact its reception and narrative direction. The alleged recasting of Ellie marks a significant shift in the series, reflecting the challenges of adapting beloved video game characters to the screen. Fans are hopeful that this decision will bring the show back on track and recapture the essence of what made the original game so compelling. If you've played The Last of Us Part 2, then you already know. Ellie wasn't just a character. She was a force of nature. She was brutal, broken, and fearless. Every single cutscene hit you in the gut. You felt her grief. You feared what she'd become, and that's what made it so unforgettable. But in the show, it felt watered down, sanitized. Almost like they were afraid to let Ellie be ugly, be violent, be vulnerable. Bella Ramsey didn't tap into that raw, dangerous energy. She gave us moments of emotion, sure, but not that deep-seated rage that made Ellie one of the most iconic video game characters of all time. And fans noticed. They always notice. That's why the disconnect was so jarring. It didn't just feel different, it felt wrong. Even though no one's gone on record, the behind-the-scenes chatter speaks volumes. Allegedly, tensions started growing mid-season. Directors were reportedly frustrated by how many reshoots were needed. Scenes were being tweaked. Emotional beats weren't landing the way they were supposed to. Some insiders say producers started realizing they might have made the wrong call halfway through filming, but it was too late. They were locked in, and by the time episodes started airing and the backlash exploded online, the damage was done. Everyone behind the show was suddenly playing defense. The energy shifted, and by the finale, it was clear this wasn't the story fans signed up for. The trust was broken. Let's just say what everyone's thinking. If Season 3 flops, The Last of Us franchise is finished. Not wounded, not bruised, finished. This isn't some mid-tier sci-fi show you can quietly cancel. This is The Last of Us. This is sacred ground for millions of fans, and HBO already lit.